We're back with another mock draft review, and this week we are going over a Redraft Superflex PPR draft. And before we get started, the best way to support this channel, and it's free, is to hit that like, subscribe, and notification bell. We would really appreciate that. And today, I will be talking about my favorite picks, my least favorite pick, added notes, and probably their 2022 ranking. Starting us off in the first slot, we have Arsenal. My favorite pick of theirs was Kareem Hunt at the 701. I'm going to continue to ride the Kareem Hunt bandwagon because this man continues to be underrated, and I am just going to keep pressing it until hopefully he gets pushed up draft boards because this man just continually gets disrespected, especially in redraft formats. This is a guy who can easily finish as a top 12 running back. My least favorite pick of theirs was Mike Evans at the 412. And yeah, that might sound kind of like a nitpick, but with DeAndre Hopkins still on the board, DeAndre Hopkins gives you wide receiver 1 overall upside. And so I'm going to take that upside, especially, the rumors with Kyler and whatnot. But recent reports have said that they're on the same page, that they're looking to extend his contract and whatnot. So DeAndre Hopkins is someone who before this year, missed only one game in his very long career. And so I expect him to come back from this year, be healthy, and honestly, probably not miss a game for a while. And so DeAndre Hopkins is my guy here. Mike Evans did lose Tom Brady. On top of that, he scored the second most touchdowns out of wide receivers this year. And touchdowns are volatile, even though no matter what QB comes in, he will be the main red zone target. But still, there's way more questions, in my opinion, towards Mike Evans than there are DeAndre Hopkins. And some added notes is there are a lot of question marks with some of their picks, but AB with the last pick was one that I really liked because if he does end up playing, I don't expect it to happen, but if he does, he has the upside to be a wide receiver 1. There's a very low chance that AB will play in the NFL again, but on the out chance that he does, especially with the last pick with this specific draft, he's someone I'm definitely willing to take a flyer on. My 2022 rank for this team would be 9th overall. I just don't see quite the upside for this team to be in playoff contention. And then in the second slot, we have Kelly, our guest, and my favorite pick of hers was Josh Jacobs at the 502. I just feel like Josh Jacobs is another running back who's continually underrated. And getting him there as a running back who almost always finishes as a low-end RB1, just great value there. And then on the opposite side, my least favorite pick was CEH at the 411, especially in redraft leagues. CEH probably shouldn't be going until round 7, round 8. I know that might sound crazy, but I'd much rather have Kareem Hunt over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And honestly, someone like Michael Carter, Leonard Fournette, A.J. Dillon, who are going in the 8th round, there's a chance that I would take them over him too. So again, I just felt like this was way too much of a reach. And another player I felt like she reached on was Hunter Renfrow to get that stack with Derek Carr. I just don't expect him to have the same production with Waller coming back and expecting to be healthy. And they very well could draft another wide receiver, which could take even more targets from Hunter Renfrow this coming year. I do really like Hunter Renfrow's talent. He's one of those guys, he's like Cole Beasley type of guy who, puts up numbers and whatnot, but I just don't expect the volume that he saw this past year to continue. When Renfrow was drafted, there were still a lot of other wide receivers on the board who I feel like are more talented and have more consistency to them. This is definitely one of the worst wide receiver rooms, but has my favorite tight end room in this whole entire league. To get Mark Andrews and Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is someone who really surprised people this past year going to Arizona and really thrived as a tight end and was very underrated himself. And then obviously we have Mark Andrews who just destroyed all expectations of him. Even people who were Mark Andrews truthers were probably surprised at how good he was this past year. And I expect that to continue because his volume will not go away. So my 2022 rank for Kelly's team is 12th place overall. And then in the third spot, we have Swamp Nola. My favorite pick of theirs was T. Higgins at the 410. My least favorite pick, on the other hand, was Melvin Gordon at the 703. You're going to hear this a lot throughout this mock draft video, but Chris Godwin was still there. And I know that Chris Godwin had this injury and whatnot, but the upside that Godwin has when he returns, and yeah, I do expect him to miss possibly up to half the season, but the upside that he's going to have to win you the league is just unreal to get in the 7th round. And so for me, I'm absolutely taking a chance on him. And I think, honestly, it would have made a lot of sense for this team to have Godwin as your wide receiver 4 and someone you could plug into your flex spot when he comes back and healthy. Some added notes was they took a lot of chances on old running backs, but should have enough production to contend for a playoff spot. Winston in the Superflex spot is a huge risk, but honestly, it could be a huge reward. He's someone who's finished very high in fantasy for production. Even though he's not the best real-life quarterback, he airs it out a ton, and so it makes it for great in fantasy. This team's 2022 rank is 7th overall. And then in the 4th spot, we have Gary Ako. I hope I'm saying that right. And my favorite pick of theirs was Juju at the 1104. Juju has had some bad years, has had some injury-riddled years, and so it's not a surprise that he's going this late. But the fact of the matter is, Juju is probably going to be a pretty solid wide receiver too. So to get him in the 11th round is an absolute steal. My least favorite pick, on the other hand, was Elijah Moore at the 704. I don't hate this pick by any means. It was definitely like a nitpick. But the fact of the matter is Chris Godwin was still there, and I would rather have him. Some added notes is way too early for Henry here. In my opinion, it's a PPR league. CMC is the most upside of any running back on the board. And if you're going to go with proven talent, he's the direction I'm going in. It's crazy to think that Christian McCaffrey's best year was 8 or 9 points better per game than Jonathan Taylor did this year. That is the crazy upside that CMC has. And I think if Gary would have gone CMC over Derrick Henry, I could have their rank as 1st overall. But for that reason, and for a couple other reasons, the 2022 rank is 2nd overall. In the 5th slot, we have Tyreek Gray-Joy. My favorite pick of theirs was TJ Hawkinson at the 608. The 7th tight end off the board. But the fact of the matter is, TJ Hawkinson and Darren Waller scored the same amount of points per game, and you got Hawkinson about a round later. And so I really like that value there. And I'm also someone who enjoys getting a dependable tight end, and I think Hawkinson is going to grow even more than he did last year, but he showed what he's capable of. And then my least favorite pick is Antonio Gibson at the 305. Kamara would have been my pick here. I know there's a ton of uncertainty in New Orleans, but Kamara has shown over and over again what he's capable of, especially in the passing game. Alvin Kamara is what we were hoping Antonio Gibson would turn into, but didn't. And I don't expect that to be the case. And so here I definitely, especially because it's a redraft league, this might be a little bit of dynasty focus coming into mind here, but for redraft, I'm taking Kamara over Gibson. Some added notes is this team has top tier starters, but the depth to go along with it. And so my 2022 rank for them is 1st overall. In the 6th spot, we have N. Haas, aka my boy Nolan. And my favorite pick of his was Garrett Wilson at the 1007. Garrett Wilson is someone who can step right into an offense. He's going to be drafted in the 1st round and have an immediate impact. So to get him at the 10th spot as your wide receiver 4, I think that's a fantastic risk to take because he's going to be one of those guys who shoots up draft boards as this offseason goes on, especially post-draft, because all that hype's going to come. And then the least favorite pick is Mac Jones at the 906. The fact of the matter is Mac Jones is a very good real-life quarterback, but he doesn't offer any rushing upside. You have people like Tua, Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, and honestly Deshaun Watson, who really offer a higher floor because of that rushing upside. And so for me, Mac Jones isn't someone I really want a whole lot to do with just because I think he's a little bit overrated in fantasy. And some added notes is it's another well-rounded team that could easily win the championship, in my opinion. Got great value in the second half of the draft, too, which is honestly one of the keys to being a contender is finding those values later in the draft. My 2022 ranking for Enhaas's team is 3rd overall. In the 7th slot, we have Simon, one of the FYF crew. And my favorite pick of his was Alvin Kamara at the 307. Kind of like what I was saying previously, Kamara has just shown that upside to continually be really a top 3 running back and have that kind of upside. Yes, I know there are questions in New Orleans, but no matter what quarterback they get, unless they get a very heavily rushing quarterback, they're going to be dumping balls off to Alvin Kamara because they need to utilize him because he's the best weapon they have on that team. My least favorite pick here was James Robinson at the 1006. There's a real possibility that he doesn't play at all in 2022 because of his injury and the timing of it. It happened at the end of the year. And I know you could probably say the same about Chris Godwin, but the fact is the Jags aren't going to be contenders. They're probably going to have another really bad season, and there's going to be no real reason to rush James Robinson back into the lineup. They're going to have Travis Etienne, and I'm sure they'll bring in some solid backup running backs, but I just don't expect James Robinson to be rushed back like I would someone like Chris Godwin. And then some added notes is fairly well-balanced team, but the depth at the wide receiver position is worrisome. Getting a top-tier tight end in Pitts, who has tight end 1 upside in the 5th round, was also fantastic value. Like I said, I love me some top-tier tight ends. My 2022 rank for Simon's team is 4th overall. And then in the 8th slot, we have Z2's team. My favorite pick of his was, of course, Chris Godwin at the 708. I just feel like Chris Godwin fell way too far. He is way too talented. Kind of like what I was saying before for Swamp Nola's team is he picked up Chris Godwin as his wide receiver 4, who once he gets healthy, he will be able to plug him in to his flex spot and he will have the best flex player in the league. And so I really love that pick there. My least favorite pick, on the other hand, was Damien Harris at the 605. Kareem Hunt was still on the board. Fact of the matter is Kareem Hunt catches passes and Damien Harris does not. Damien Harris also had a ton of touchdowns this past year, and that's just unrealistic to expect going forward, especially with Ramondre Stevenson seemingly getting a bigger role in that offense in the coming years. Some added notes is the wide receiver room goes crazy, but the QB2 position is a huge question mark. Having to decide between someone like Malik Willis or Carson Wentz, kind of not knowing if either are going to be starters is something that I would worry about, but it's something that you can also just attack through trades if needed. My 2022 ranking of theirs is 6th overall. And then in the 9th slot, we have Josh's team. My favorite pick of his is Deshaun Watson at the 1004. Yes, there's a ton of question marks. We don't know if he's going to play this season and whatnot, but to get a top 4 quarterback, if he comes back in the 10th slot in a Superflex league, no matter if it's redraft or dynasty, you got to take that every single time. So I really like that pick because if he doesn't play this season, you just wasted a 10th round pick. It's really not that big of an investment. But like I said, that upside is 2nd, 3rd round upside. My least favorite pick of his, on the other hand, was Justin Fields at the 709. I understand that Justin Fields does have that floor with the rushing upside. I'm just not sure. I'm an Ohio State fan. I love my Buckeyes, but I'm just not too sure that Justin Fields is going to make it in the NFL. I just don't think he's going to be a very good quarterback, and that offense was a complete mess, and I don't really see why that should change all that much. I don't think Matt Nagy was the only reason, now that he's gone, that the Chicago Bears are going to be some team that's, contending for the playoffs. And so I just don't really like that pick here, even though Justin Fields definitely has the talent to prove me wrong. And I really hope that's the case. I'm just not going to bet on that in the 7th round. Some added notes is the QB situation has depth, which you always love to have in Superflex leagues. And then the other side, we have Zeke and Isaiah Spiller, who are running backs that will play a huge role in how this season goes for Josh's team. If they both play well, if Isaiah Spiller is the starter at his drafted team, then that will be a great value there. But if not, that running back 3 situation is pretty terrifying. But the 2022 rank I have for Josh's team is 8th overall. And then in the 10th spot, we have Brady. My favorite pick of his was Drake London at the 11-10. Similar to Garrett Wilson, I love this pick of Drake London. I know he's coming off a pretty big injury, but at the same time, he will be playing this year and he will be a first-round talent. And he's a guy who has that Mike Evans size, so he could be that new age Mike Evans. And so I think he's going to be heavily targeted in the red zone, which is going to pay huge dividends in fantasy football. My least favorite pick, on the other hand, was Michael Thomas at the 603. I understand the talent that Michael Thomas has, and I really like Michael Thomas, but I just feel like it's too early for a guy who hasn't had production in 2 years. And I know that's been due to injury and whatnot, but there are just a lot of question marks surrounding Michael Thomas, and I personally think that he should be going a round or 2 later. Some added notes as the running backs and the quarterbacks both have top 5 upside at their position with Waller, who should have a great comeback year. I know there's a lot of people who think Waller might be, getting too old and injured and whatnot, but you have to realize he took a break from football for a while, and so he still has a lot of tread on those tires. And so I do expect a big breakout year from him in 2022. Speaking of the 2022 ranking, I have Brady's team as 5th overall. In the 11th pick, we have Trippy Trout, and my favorite pick of theirs was Kyler Murray at the 111. Now, I'm someone who is very low on Kyler Murray, and I have been probably the last 5 weeks of the season, I just didn't see the same Kyler Murray that I think we were all expecting, and just really wasn't playing well and really showed kind of some of the immaturities in his game that he needs to work on. So hopefully he does this offseason. And the news broke that Kyler and the Cardinals are, getting along great and they're working on that extension. So that is really good news. But at the end of the day, Kyler Murray has some of the best rushing upside outside of, maybe Lamar Jackson. And so that's someone who has a crazy low floor and someone you can definitely count on. And in a super flex league, to get Kyler at the 11th pick is crazy considering last year he was going at pick 3 or 4. And so I really love that value there. My least favorite pick was Miles Sanders at the 5'11". Calvin Ridley is still there. If you're asking me to trade Calvin Ridley for Miles Sanders straight up, I will do that 100 out of 100 times. And I am an Eagles fan, but I just don't trust how they're using Miles Sanders. He's very talented, but they just don't want to give him the rock and give him the bell cow role. And Calvin Ridley is going to be the wide receiver 1 no matter where he ends up. And then some added notes is only 2 running backs and weak receivers, but does have great starting quarterbacks. And so that honestly can make up for a lot of the production that will lack in other areas. And so for my 2022 ranking for this team, I have Trippy Trout as the 11th overall team. And then in the last spot, we have Jordan at the 12. And my favorite pick, coming right off of what I was just saying, is Calvin Ridley at the 601. Calvin Ridley is a stud, has shown that top 5 upside. As long as he comes back mentally healthy and ready, I think he's going to just tear up the league like he has in years past. My least favorite pick here was Cole Kmet at the 11-12 with Hunter Henry and Pat Freiermuth on the board. And they both outscored Kmet by over 2 points per game. And so for me, I'm definitely shifting from Kmet, definitely a flyer versus someone who I feel confident in my starting tight end spot. Some added notes is they have some really nice pieces, but not enough for me to see them as a contender. For that reason, 2022 ranking I have for Jordan's team is 10th overall. That's a wrap for our mock draft review. Thank you so much for coming out and watching it. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. Drop a comment. Let us know who your favorite team is and why. And also, we are going to do Mock Draft Mondays almost every single Monday this offseason. And so go down into our Discord chat. Go get in there. It will notify you when those drafts are, and you can draft with us. Yes, you can draft with us, and I can review your team. So make sure you do that. And either this side or this side, one of these two sides, will have the mock draft that we reviewed, and under it, it will have all the mock draft reviews and the mock drafts in a playlist altogether. So make sure you check those out for more of our content.